It's that little sound that your AirPods make to tell you that they're out of battery. Sam Cody, back here with Weekly Favorites number 16. This week has been a lot of fun for me. I read an entire book. I continued a book I was already reading. I listened to some new music and finished up The Rings of Power. So I'm going to cover all my thoughts about that here today. What I'm reading. I started and finished reading What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher this week. As I talked about in my last video, I'm feeling the fatigue of reading a lot of long books. So I want something shorter and something that's relatively seasonal. This is a spooky book. I don't read very many spooky books, so this one was a lot of fun for me to dive into. It's a lot different from what I usually read. If you didn't know, it's a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's story, The Fall of House Usher, Easton's friend who's fallen ill, and her brother, as well as an American doctor and an eccentric mycologist. So this one was a lot of fun. It was really quick for me to read. And I was gripped the whole time. T. Kingfisher is like extremely good at creating an atmosphere. It's almost impossible to remove the characters from the setting because it all meshes so well together. Some really skillful writing, and I'll be looking forward to reading some more from T. Kingfisher. I've heard of Nettle and Bone by her before, but I don't know anything about it. So maybe I'll look into that. I'm sure she has some other work as well. Throughout the book, there was a consistent tone of like uneasiness and mystery that just permeated through everything. If you're interested in mushrooms and fungi, there's a lot here for you to love. If you couldn't tell by the cover, the mushrooms play a pretty central role. There are species of fungi that can like take over the bodies of insects, and this book kind of asks what happens when that can happen to mammals. And there's some really interesting and really scary results. I also continued reading The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is part of my mega series, and it's going pretty well. I am on book 4 of Lord of the Rings. If you didn't know, each one of the 3 books is split up into books, and The Two Towers has books 3 and 4 in it. So I made it to book 4. We're now following Sam and Frodo, and they've finally met up with Gollum, which is so fun to see. And I'm also listening to Andy Serkis's narration of it, the audiobook version. I've been listening to the audiobook at like 2.5 times speed while I look at the physical book, and that just helps me go a lot faster while still retaining everything. That's worked really well. I am back to really enjoying reading this. I think that Tolkien's prose, while beautiful, can oftentimes be trudging and slow. So just having that extra voice to keep me moving forwards is really nice. And I definitely recommend doing that with this work. I'm about 60% through it, I believe, something like that. So I think if I continue at the pace that I read today and yesterday, then I'll be in good shape to finish it in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. I could be mistaken, but I think Andy Serkis was Gollum in the movies, I think. If not, he does a fantastic impression of that voice, which has been so much fun to hear. I honestly didn't expect it to sound so much like the Peter Jackson Gollum. So that was a pleasant surprise. His performance in general is just fantastic. I'm at the part where they got to the Black Gate and are looking for a different way into Mordor. Things are picking up. I'm really excited about where this is going. I already generally know what happens from the movies, but it's still so much fun to see it unfold here. And the final thing I'm reading is We Ride Upon Sticks by Quan Barry. This is a sort of Halloween witchy sort of book that takes place in Massachusetts, where I'm from, and it follows a team of field hockey players in high school as they are sort of using witchcraft to benefit their team and themselves. And I'm very, very excited to see where it goes. The point of view that it's told from is really interesting too. It's told from, like, the narrator is the team all kind of telling the story. It's like a third person collective, I want to say. I don't exactly know the term for it, but yeah, it's a very interesting perspective that this story is told from. So far, it's just a lot of fun. This ragtag group of high school girls in the 80s sort of doing what they can by any means necessary to win some field hockey games. So the vibe of it is fantastic, and I'm really liking it so far. I'm only like 10% of the way into it, so I'll keep you posted. What I'm listening to. So I'm going to have to read this name off the screen here. This week I've been listening to Those Days, Light Years to the North Face Sphere A/W. I don't know. I think it's just Those Days is the title of the album, and then the rest of it's extra. I'm not sure, but it's by Haruka Nakamura, and it's been great for reading along to. It's more of a lo-fi vibe than I'm used to from Nakamura. I feel like what I've heard from him in the past has been more like piano based, but this seems to have a little more production to it, and it's really cool. It sounds very interesting without being distracting while I'm trying to do other stuff. So, and I'm always looking for more music like that because I think I get kind of bored of the same music while I'm reading, and I like to sort of mix it up and have some new material to work with. What I'm watching. This week, I finished watching Rings of Power. If you didn't know, the season finale came out last Friday, and I have mixed feelings about it. I think, like a lot of people, I had high hopes, and those hopes weren't necessarily met. Did I enjoy watching it? Yes, I liked watching it all the way through. I found it to be an enjoyable experience, but I can't help but feel like it was missing something. On paper, it should have been really good. It had conflicts introduced at the beginning that were resolved towards the end, but I feel like the pacing of it was just way off and not what I typically like in terms of pacing. When the conflicts were resolved, I found that it didn't hit hard for me. I didn't feel anything about it really. It was just like, oh, now that's done. The Sauron mystery, I was not really a fan of. I feel like that should have been revealed way earlier in the season, and we should have been dealing with the aftermath of it towards the end. I wasn't a fan of the choice to leave that revealed to the very end because it just made me feel like, what were we waiting for that to happen? Like, what was the point? I couldn't necessarily pinpoint the reason why it had to happen in the last episode. That could have happened earlier and had as much or more of a devastating effect. I think that could have been placed better, and then we would have had some more interesting material towards the end of the season. There was nowhere for it to go until season 2, which, like, I guess I'll watch it. Since I feel like there wasn't a lot accomplished in the first half of the season, I would have liked to see that reveal sooner to then have more material to work with for the rest of the season. That's just me. There were other critiques I had about it. Compared to something like House of the Dragon, I also watched episode, I think it was 9 of House of the Dragon. And I watched that shortly after Rings of Power, and I was so much more engaged. Even though I don't like George R.R. Martin's world as much as Middle-earth, I found myself just so invested in the story because of the character work. I think that Martin has some very questionable and even bad themes in his work. I don't support a lot of what he portrays as human nature and what is the natural way of things for humans, which in his mind seems to be violence and chaos. But because of the writing, House of the Dragon has felt so much more fulfilling and interesting to watch. It's able to engage me in a dialogue in a way that Rings of Power didn't even attempt. Even though the basis of House of the Dragon isn't something I like very much, I've just been way more engaged with the material because it's presented so skillfully. So I did like Rings of Power. I didn't love it. We'll see about season 2. I'm hoping that it gets better. I'm definitely gonna watch it and find out, but I'm going into it with my expectations now tempered, which kind of a shame, but it is what it is. What I'm making promotional material for my a cappella group's concert coming up next week. My group is Orange Appeal. You can find us on Spotify and on YouTube and Instagram. It's called Spooktacular. It's our big Halloween concert, and we're gonna have some guest groups with us, and we're gonna be performing a bunch of songs. So should be really fun. And in order to advertise that, we're making remakes of famous Halloween movie scenes. So last night we filmed one about Psycho and Scream. And then I think tomorrow we're going to film the Mean Girls Halloween scene and all that. So that's been super fun. I've been making that. And how I slow down and unplug. Most evenings I've just been reading and having some tea and winding down that way. I found that to be really relaxing and a great way to end my day without my phone involved, I guess. Unless I'm listening to the audiobook, then my phone's involved, but same difference. This has been Weekly Favorites number 16. If you didn't know, Weekly Favorites is first and foremost a blog, so if you want to subscribe to that, the link is in the description. I also have a Patreon that you can subscribe to for early access to all my videos. If you stuck around to the end of the video, you get to hear a secret, something that you only get if you stick around to the end of the video. Today's secret is that in middle and high school, I had a fish that lived for 7 or 8 years named Sargon, and he was a fantastic fish and lives forever in our hearts. Rest in peace, Sargon. See you later.